Welcome, everybody. All right, today we're talking about assassination culture. You know, assassination of public officials is a really scary, complex phenomenon that's for many, hundreds and hundreds of years has captivated the attention of psychologists, criminologists, people alike. But the psychology of assassination seeks to understand the motivations driving a person to commit these extreme acts of violence. And, there was a 20-year span, which was a violent time in the United States, where we experienced several assassinations and attempted assassinations of political leaders. That included John F. Kennedy's assassination, 1963, 1 week before I was born. The murders of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Senator, presidential candidate Robert Kennedy, the brother of John F. Kennedy in 1968. The attack on governor and presidential candidate George Wallace in 72. The attempted assassinations of Gerald Ford in 75. And the attack and attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan, president, in 1981. We've been very fortunate and to experience a long reprieve until recently of this kind of culture. And what it really has is a very strong desensitization of people. And what's really happened is we've become very tribal creatures where you're not only affiliated with a political party, but you're affiliated with a religion. And it's become that way. Our politics has become our religion, and our religion has become our politics. And it's really sad. But in assassination culture, we have so desensitized human beings to the point that you have become this thing to me. You are a thing. And what's really amazing is I witnessed it this weekend, this no kings bullcrap that people are pulling, these immature, old, crazy people and young crazy people and people who are lost in their life, lost in their ideas, lost in what is right and wrong, showing off their mental disorders left and right to the general public. It's really sad to see that these people have no ideas what they're just fighting for. All they care about is somebody funding them to go march down the street and act like a lunatic and get validated by each other. It's insane. We live in a democracy. There are no kings. The only reason that we have a president who acts like a king from that perspective is because we have no Congress and Senate that will cooperate because the Democratic Party are a bunch of children. And it's very sad. Children with no ideas, by the way. Children with no understanding, no vision of where to go. Just children, just very unhappy. Just very unhappy. I don't like this. They know what they don't like, but they don't know what they do like. And it's very sad because that immaturity is growing. And why is it growing? Because we've got all these people who saved tons and tons of money for retirement because from the Great Depression in the 30s, people learned that you can't live without nothing and we have to have retirement. So all of a sudden retirement became a very big thing in the 20th century after World War II. And people had factory jobs when they got back from the war. And they started to getting retirement when they worked in the factories. And once they got that they saved money. So when they retired, they had something to live off of, plus Social Security. So that became the dictatorial way that we all should live, is you need to have money for retirement. Unfortunately, we have all these crazy hover parents who have hovered over their children for so long that their children don't even know what it means to work. They have no values. They have no care. All they want to do is play video games in their basement of their parents and live off their parents' retirement. And so now we have them all wandering the streets with no king signs and free Palestine and whatever stupid thing that they've gravitated to make their emotional existence somewhat important. And they're walking around with the idea that if you don't agree with me, you should be dead. And they've desensitized human beings to that point. It's very sad, but we live in a culture where assassination is accepted. That's amazing that we have got so desensitized. So, assassination often involves complex interplay of psychological factors. You know, perpetrators become fixated on a particular target due to a sense of grievance and perceived injustice. And once again, it's perceived injustice. And these feelings may be exacerbated by social or political influences, like the Democratic Party. And so, what happens is we become very heated, and the planning and the execution of the assassination can also provide a sense of power and control to the perpetrator, appealing to their desire for significance, influence. And these factors, along with others, contribute to the intricate psychology of assassination. But the one big ingredient to all of this is narcissism. The desire, the desire to be a victim, the desire to be right, the desire to make yourself above the horrible crime that's being committed by the individual you have decided is the criminal. While each case is unique, there are common psychological threads that weave through the profiles of those who carry out these acts. And from deep-seated grievances and personality disorders like the Democratic Party, social isolation and obsessive fixations, psychological landscape of assassination is often marked by, I guess I would say, a confluence of factors that push them towards this drastic path. You know, there's a thing that classic paper that this guy named Arthur McDonald wrote, and he posted that most dangerous criminals are assassins of rulers. They may be sane, insane, or partially sane, or simply monstrous criminals. They may be degenerates with certain particular traits like instability and continual changing of their occupation and habitations. They're usually vain, irritable, impulsive, mystical, and are easily influenced by surroundings, much like the lunatics and the terrorists from the Middle East, especially their mystical thinking. It's really amazing that these commonalities are a part of what makes up people who are assassins, people who want people dead. But now this is a pervasive trait in our country, in our people, in the people of the world. They actually feel that if I kill somebody, that's going to solve all the problems and that's going to create justice and fairness. Well, it's not a very good idea, especially in a democracy. If you've got a bunch of idiots like in Iran where they make themselves the rulers and they'll kill you if you don't vote them in office, or Venezuela or Cuba, those are crazy places. And yeah, if you're going to take over a government and force people to live a certain way, yeah, there's probably going to be assassination because that's a desire for freedom. But when you have a democracy and a democratic government, and that democratic government can't function as a democratic government because you've got a bunch of advocates as politicians rather than people that represent the people, what's going to happen is you're leaving only one person to make that decision. That's the president. And it's a very sad thing because that's not how this country evolved, but it makes him a target. Now, here's the interesting thing about what people want to assassinate. The people that want to assassinate are looking for someone who is absolutely decisive. Decisive people make themselves a target. Indecisive people are people who see themselves as unwilling victims of decisive people. So there are a vast amount of indecisive victims that live in our culture today A bunch of people who can't make their mind up one way or the other about what they want. All they know is what they don't want. And what they don't want is what decisive people decide. Even if they've weighed it with common sense, even if they've weighed it with a cost benefit analysis down to the granular details, they can't stand it. They can't stand it. They can't stand the fact that somebody is willing to make decisions. And so they are willing to assassinate them and replace them with indecisive people. It's very sad. You know, as we stand in the wake of an attempted assassination of President Trump, it's really sad because what we're seeking is answers, and the answers fall on our society and the way it's structured, and it falls on the generation of young people that are being influenced by the lunatics who have raised them with all this moral majority thinking like you guys know the best of the world, what the world should be made of, and you have all the greatest decisions, and you are the most intelligent people, and we all should just listen to you and be a communist government following whatever you decide is right, and whatever pronoun we should all follow, and whatever decisions that you make, we should follow you, even though you all don't know what the hell you want in the first place. The frustrating truth is that we will never have answers. Life is very complex. You know, law enforcement investigations provide partial clues, you know, and really what we really have to understand is the profile of an assassin once again is a vain, irritable, impulsive, mystical, and easily influenced individual. Well, what do you think social media does? It creates people like that who will listen to whatever is put out there in social media, whatever stupid Hollywood lunatic decides to get their little podcast and go out there and state their stupid ass opinion as if they've researched it. And then these idiots think because you were successful in that movie, I should listen to you. And then they listen to them. And then they listen to people who call themselves reporters when really all they are is commentators, and they believe what they have to say as if they've researched it. They haven't. And it's really sad that we are so stupid looking for answers from other people who don't even have the research or the intelligence to give you the answers. But we're searching for it all the time. The assassination of public officials is a very complex, multifaceted phenomenon that's been studied from all kinds of perspectives. As we stand in the wake of Trump being attempted to be assassinated 3 different times, we seek answers to a lot of violence and failed attacks on prominent figures. So, you know, what would be amazing for the Democratic Party is if somehow they've engineered so much negativity about him that he gets assassinated. That's what they would love to happen. They would love him to be assassinated by them continuing to make a story about what a heinous, horrible human being when he is making choices that are very courageous and very good for the well-being of our country and our world and our children generations beyond your life. The frustrating truth is that we will never, ever, ever understand why these people have gotten to where they have because there are no black and white answers. But the truth is that we have a bunch of very indecisive, very upset people because our political environment has been so weird given the democratic leadership this country's had for the past 20 years of all the stupidity that they've come up with and all the ways that they have allowed fraud and all the ways that they've allowed people to take complete advantage of and all the ways they've allowed people to cross our border without any consequence whatsoever, any filtering whatsoever. They have allowed our country to be watered down into a global country, a country that has no values, that is assuming the values of the world when you also have people that have been here for generations that want the values of the country. So you have people that want the values of our country, which were pretty darn good since we were the leader of the free world. And then you've got the values of the world, which comes from a third world perspective of survival. The value systems of a third world is not going to match up with the first world, but we've integrated them together. And now we've got people who could care less about the value of life. All they care about is their emotions and their anger and their frustrations. There's a thing called the frustration aggression hypothesis and a theory in psychology that suggests that when people are blocked or prevented from achieving their goals, they may become frustrated. That can lead to aggressive behavior, and the aggression is seen as a way of reducing or alleviating the feelings of frustration. So in psychology, we refer to this cognitive path to alleviating pain as projection. I am going to project on that decisive person all of the hatred that I have for the narcissist in my life, all of the hatred that I have for the teachers that abused me, all of the hatred that I have for the parents that neglected me, all of the hatred that I have for the siblings that didn't treat me well, all of the hatred I have for the bullies that have bullied me in my life. And I'm going to project it on the one person that is actually trying to make decisively good decisions for the well-being of our overall population. I'm going to project all my hatred on that person. Boy, that's smart, isn't it? It's amazing how stupid people can be. Projection is what we do to try to release our feelings. And we use the outlets. The outlets that we create are the people that we see on television, the people that we see in leadership, the people that we see doing things in this life. And if we don't agree with them, or if some quality about them reminds us of somebody who's abused us, we're going to project on that person all of the hatred we have for a very real person in our life. You know, it's important to note that the frustration aggression hypothesis is just one possible explanation for violent acts against public figures, and it should be considered alongside other psychological theories and social factors influencing those behaviors. You know, there's also this seeking fame hypothesis. And that hypothesis that assassinations are seeking fame suggests that some people may commit acts of violence, like assassinations of public figures, in order to gain notoriety and attention. These people harbor a desire for recognition, infamy, a sense of power that comes from being known for committing a high-profile crime. Assassinating a public figure can attract widespread media and public interest. Kind of like Luigi Mangione. What a sicko. And what a bunch of idiots that think that that is somebody to admire. They created a musical out of San Francisco that's now off Broadway about him. It's disgusting that these people celebrate these kind of people. But that's how angry people are. That's how repressed people are. Why? Because they're stupid Democratic politicians that ruined our country, and they've had to live in the side effects of that, and then they blame it on everybody, the people that try to fix it. Lee Harvey Oswald, in connection with the assassination, left copious notes about his motivation to kill. You know, he wanted very badly to be recognized for his belief in socialism. Socialism was a very important component to him. Kennedy was invading Cuba. Cuba was trying to become a communist country. So that had a lot to do with the assassination of John F. Kennedy, as he was trying to turn over a Soviet-based group led by Castro, who took over Cuba. You know, it's really understanding also that personality disorders display a significant role in connection with the assassination of public figures. People who suffer from personality disorders exhibit traits and behaviors that increase their likelihood of committing violent acts, like assassinations. And we're going to go into those personalities after we take a quick break. So come back. Welcome back, everybody. All right, we're talking about personality disorders and how they correlate to the assassination culture. So there's this thing called a narcissistic personality disorder. People with narcissistic personality disorder have inflated sense of self-importance, the need for admiration, the lack of empathy for other people. This combination of traits leads to drive someone to seek attention and recognition through violent acts like assassinations. Well, how did those narcissists come about? Well, they often come about from neglect. They have two parents who are so into themselves and so into arguing and so into their life that they neglect their child and turn them into an adult at a very young age. And since that kid has to be an adult at a very young age, they have to make adult decisions, they have to be correct, and they have to find ways to get on their parents' radar, like making straight A's and doing all the right things and making good adult decisions. And then all their teachers reinforce their personality as if they're the greatest thing on the planet Earth, because the teachers like the fact that they have adult behaviors and they don't have to watch them all the time like they have to with all the other kids. Plus, the narcissist never fits in with all the immature kids in their class because they're making decisions far beyond the other kids' years. And when they do that, what basically takes place is they think they're right about everything. And they look down on everybody else that is their age because they're more immature than they are. And they are also getting reinforced by their teachers about how wonderful a student that they really are. And so in their narcissism, they think they're correct. Unfortunately, the adult brain only forms once. So if you're going to carry a 12-year-old adult brain into your adult life, you're probably going to act like an angry teenager. And that's what narcissists are. Then you have this thing called an antisocial personality disorder. People with that display a disregard for the rights of others. They have impulse behavior, they have aggression, they have a lack of remorse for their actions. And these characteristics make people with antisocial personality disorder more prone to engaging in criminal behavior. They don't like people. They look down on people. They look at people as stupid because you leave this out in the front yard, I could just take it. I mean, you're not looking after it. You know, you left your doors unlocked, so I could just steal. Oh, you left your car in the parking lot of the grocery store at night without a light under a light, so I can just steal it. So antisocial personalities are often very, very somewhat experientially intelligent, but have very little common sense because they don't think much about consequences as much as they think about, I want this, I need to get this, I need to have this. And they obsess on what they need to have, and they create a very stupid or very intelligent plan to get what they want, and then they deal with the consequences after. A paranoid personality disorder, people with that's also correlated with meth and other drugs. But, people with a paranoid personality disorder, also schizophrenia, by the way, often harbor unfounded suspicions and mistrust towards other people. And this intense paranoia leads someone to believe that harming a public figure is necessary to protect themselves and their beliefs. Because people with paranoid personalities are very secluded in their beliefs. They're very secluded in their emotions. They don't share much with anybody, but they have a lot of emotions stored up. And what they do is they try to justify it through the role of such things as assassination. Now you have the batshit crazy ones, the borderline personality disorder. There's a lot of these crazies because these people love to be right, but what they do is they align with one person and then they hop over the fence and align with someone else, and they'll align, and then they go over the border, and they align with someone else that is on the opposite side of that point of view, and then they go back to the other one that is on the other side of the point of view. That's why they're all politicians. People with borderline personality experience intense mood swings, impulsive, unstable relationships, identify disturbances. They live by making everybody else crazy so they don't look crazy. They gaslight the hell out of everybody. They think they are so smart and they think they are so right. But eventually, people catch on that these dudes are crazy makers. Every time they enter a room, they create chaos. They create chaos with everyone because they make everybody else think they're crazy when actually it's the borderline that's crazy. They're always blaming others for everything because borderlines think they're victims of every single thing in the world. They will make themselves a victim no matter what. They just want attention. They love attention. And they have a deep fear of not being accepted. And so what they do is they do sexual things. They love sex. They use sex as a way to get people's attention. They also love making friends with you and acting like I'm your best friend and then going off with somebody else and actually saying just the opposite about you. So it's important to note that not everyone with personality disorders will engage in violent behavior like assassinations. However, the presence of certain disordered traits can contribute to an individual's motivations and decision-making processes when considering acts like targeting public figures. What's really interesting to understand is, like the borderline, who are a bunch of politicians, politicians love to align with all kinds of different people. So they actually will propagate somebody who's in the assassination mindset, and then they'll go over on the other side in the afternoon and act like somebody that's a part of, a church family. That how could somebody think like that? I can't believe that they would do that. That's just a terrible thing. So they go to all sides of an issue, and they drive everybody in the world absolutely insane because they reinforce unhealthy and then they try to reinforce healthy. And none of it's healthy because it's all crazy. Then there's social isolation. That's a hypothesis. In the context of assassination suggests that people who feel disconnected, marginalized, alienated from society may be more susceptible to engaging violent acts like assassinations. So social isolation can manifest in a whole lot of different forms, like physical isolation from other people, perceived rejection or ostracism, or a lack of meaningful social connections. So oftentimes, the things that can contribute to motivations and behaviors behind potential assassins through the social isolation theory is a lack of social support. So people who lack strong social support networks experience feelings of loneliness, abandonment, and despair. And without positive relationships for guidance or emotional comfort, these people become increasingly vulnerable and apathetic, and they become vulnerable to extreme ideologies and radical beliefs that justify violence against public figures, like ICE, like all the crazy Minnesotans who went after ICE. Social isolation, alienation from society. Some people feel like outsiders within their own communities, but people that believe they are outsiders because they decided to be outsiders. So they have cultural differences because they're an outsider, political beliefs, mental health issues, and other factors. This sense of alienation breeds resentment towards societal norms and authority figures, leading some people to view high-profile targets as symbols of oppression or injustice. Once again, a decisive person like Trump is an ideal target for all these crazy people. There's also these people that desire recognition, social isolation, people seeking validation or recognition, committing to an act of extreme like assassination as a way to leave their mark on the world, or all these crazy old women who sing stupid songs they make up in their old folks' home and then go out on the streets and act like they're protesting. The notoriety associated with those actions could fulfill a deep-seated need for significance and belonging. And there are lots of those people. There are a lot of lonely people in this world and in this country. And they are very, very much out of balance. And they love to be in the Democratic Party. And the Democratic Party loves them. But it's mental disorders. Here's another strange thing. A disorder, it's a valid disorder. It's called gender identity. A gender identity disorder. Well, what do you think of a transvestite? Yeah. What do you think of people who are bisexual? With people that are asexual? It is a mental disorder, guys. A mental disorder. These are not people you want teaching in your schools or running your entire school district. There's also escapism. For some socially isolated people facing personal struggles and psychological distress, planning an assassination might offer a temporary escape from their own inner turmoil by focusing on external targets rather than addressing their underlying issues. Maybe this is a little too much psychology, but actually, it has a lot of answers for these crazy people who have desensitized their views on human beings so much that they're willing to see them be killed or kill them. By understanding how social isolation can influence the mindset and behavior of potential assassins, it's crucial for society to address underlying systematic issues. That may include addressing inadequate mental health support systems, community integration of programs, efforts aimed at fostering inclusive and empathy among all members of society. Moreover, interventions focus on reducing social isolation, promoting healthy interpersonal relationships, can also mitigate the risk. But here's the deal. Guess who studies how to be a therapist? People who need one. Lots of people go into the mental health field because they have mental health issues and they need self-psychology. Many people that go after mental health degrees have mental health issues and oftentimes do not finish, but the ones that do finish and go out and practice often go ahead and attract people like borderline personalities and crazy people because they sit around validating mental health issues rather than trying to help them. There's a lot of debates that rage over the freedom of choice over, killers or would-be killers. There's people that want these people free. The people that kill, they want them free. It's amazing. It's amazing that people are that stupid. But ultimately, the problem is there's no objective, reasonable way to determine what is an irresistible behavior. People are good with impulsive behaviors these days. They do impulsive things and then they justify it after. It's almost like we're all being run by ADHD crazies. You know, the profile of assassins, once again, starts with social isolation. Many assassins are characterized as loners who struggle to form meaningful social connections. And then by the way, they're probably all doing kill games on video games in their mother's basement. But the isolation can exacerbate feelings of alienation and hostility because video games actually promote an assassination culture. They think that you can just rebirth the person that you kill. It's really sad, but these video games are very strongly programming kids' brains to desensitize what it is to be a human being. And the characteristic of social isolation may be the most salient common trait of assassins. But also, once again, personality disorders. It's a significant numbers of assassins suffer from severe personality disorders. And guess what? There's no medication for a personality disorder like narcissism, paranoia, antisocial, borderlines. These disorders can contribute to their sense of grievance and justification of their actions. Schizoaffective disorder, where they're kind of schizophrenic, but they're not full blown. And then you got the real schizophrenics, The other part of it is they have a fixation and obsession part of their personality. Assassins often develop an obsessive focus on their target, viewing them as an embodiment of their grievances and frustrations. That's why when you look at their search engines, you're going to find all kinds of obsessions around the person that they want to assassinate or the type of person that they want to assassinate. Like Jews, they love to fixate on Jews, by the way. Grievance and perceived injustice. Many assassins are motivated by a deep sense of personal and political grievance. They often perceive themselves as the victims of injustice, and they see their actions as a form of retribution. I see people saying that if you're black, you should not go to a protest because you're going to be killed. Really? Or if you're Mexican, you're going to get arrested. Really? It's you guys are crazy. You have lost your freaking objectivity and your minds. It's amazing. You know who's the biggest part of ICE, and border security? Minorities are the vast majority of people who are in those police forces. Did you know that? Have you looked into that? Then there's the pathway to violence. This involves a series of steps leading up to the act, including planning, preparation, sometimes even rehearsals. And this behavior is a critical indicator in threat assessments. Also, they identify with other assassins. Some people identify with previous assassins, much like the school shooters created this pattern of school shootings over the years, starting with Columbine. They look at these violent aggressors and adopt similar ideologies or methods. But the biggest part, guys, is mental health issues, especially untreated. While not all people with mental health issues become violent, certain conditions, particularly those involving paranoia or delusions, can increase the risk. So it's important for us to come to grips with what is the profile of an assassin. That's a very important thing. The public perceives lethal violence to be an action taken by troubled, immoral people. However, the vast majority of violent acts, including the killing of other human beings, cannot be explained by mental instability or defect. It's also societal norms. It's also the influencers. And the influencers that we're seeing today are the people who are social advocates who have migrated into the Democratic Party and taken it over. And these people want to take over our world. They want to tell us all how to live. They want to tell us all what decisions we can and cannot make. They want to tell us exactly what we can eat and cannot eat, what is popular, what is not, what we can watch on television, what we can't. They want to dictate everything. They want to do this DEI crap where, it doesn't matter who's good for the job. It doesn't matter if they're a plumber, who's the best plumber. It's who's the minority plumber that never gets a chance. That's what they want. It's sickening. It's sickening and it's stupid. And I can't believe that our human race has migrated to this level of intelligence, but that's where it is. People actually are looking at soldiers as the enemy when soldiers are the ones that are protecting us. They look at the police as the enemy when the police are there to protect us. Come on. What in the hell is that? Where did all this come from? It came from people who want power. People who keep repeating the same messages, diluted messages over and over and over again until you finally buy it. And kids who don't know any better are going to buy it. And kids are obstinate. They want to be right about everything. So once they buy something, they're going to stay with it no matter if it makes any sense or not. They just stay with it because that's what I believe in. And I'm just going to believe in it. I'm going to stay down that path. Morality is not a universal fixed concept. It's less of an absolute than we would like to think. But what is considered moral in one community, one society, or individual may be perceived as immoral or wrong to another. Violence committed by enemies is often portrayed as unthinkably immoral and inherently evil. However, if you think about it, you may consider it to be moral to kill somebody that you consider to be your enemy, somebody who doesn't agree with you. And we're getting into that day and age now where all I have to do is not agree with you, and it'd be great if I were dead. Let's take another break, and then we're going to come right back. Welcome, everybody. We're talking about assassination culture. You know, people who are perpetrators of violence often act on behalf of communities or groups that they identify with and feel the need to protect. An important psychological step people undertake through their lives is association with an in group based on shared identification. And group identity is not necessarily fixed for any given individual, it's herd mentality. Group identity is a sad thing because it lacks individual thinking. What it is groupthink. And groupthink is a very scary, stupid thing that has led to a lot of controversy and disaster and death in this world for centuries. So, you know, if you look at people as enemies, they're going to be inherently evil. And you're going to find every reason to make them into evil. But group identities are fluid depending on the situation at hand. The identity with a particular in-group generally results in exclusion of members that do not belong or considered part of the out-group. And this constant flux of identity formation happens when all people, you know, find themselves in existential external danger. Heightened perception of in-group is uniquely virtuous. So the characterization of violence against non-members as protecting the virtual in-group. And that's what we've got today. We've got tribal mentality. We're all in little tribes now, big tribes even. And if you're not a part of the crazies, you're going to get killed. It's really sad. It's a really sad place. Really sad. Two frameworks complemented with each other and demonstrate a need for flexibility and fluidity when examining complex things like identity formation. What you have to understand is we are not black and white creatures. If you lived in a very small community with no hospital, no police, no fire, you would have to band together as a community. You could not make enemies. What you would have to do is you would have to look beyond the negative qualities of your neighbor. They may be beating their wife, they may be an alcoholic, they may be beating their children, but you may need their tractor, or you may need their help if your house goes on fire, or you may need to stay at their home because your home, floods. Something bad could happen, and your neighbor is your only way of survival. So back when people had to live in communities and knew what communities were before they had social media and the safety of living in their little hovels and never getting out of their little homes after COVID, people that live in a community have to be more good than they are bad, more right than they are wrong, and they have to figure out how to get along with each other. And that is what it takes to make a society. We are all more good than we are bad, more right than we are wrong. And yes, there's going to be elements of people that are crazy and criminals and all that stuff. And yes, we have to have social order to take care of those people. But the bottom line is we walking human beings interacting with each other need to view each other not as black and white, but as gray. Gray, gray, gray. Very gray. And we have to look for the gray. And we got to look for the good in each other. And we have to learn to be grateful, which is not what a quality of today's day and age. People are not grateful whatsoever. As a matter of fact, they have very little manners. Our children today don't even know what manners are. They don't even know what it is to open your mother's door. It's really sad. It's really a bad place that we're in. But gratefulness is a quality that we are greatly missing. And in this assassination culture that we live in, gratefulness would be a great thing to counteract that particular quality from a social influence perspective. You know, political violence targeting Trump and Elon Musk is increasingly normalized. It's amazing that if someone takes a point of view that may be actually beneficial to the human race, because they make decisions, because they put themselves out there, because they make statements that are decisive. If these crazy people who don't have any ideas, they don't know what's right or wrong, all they know is they don't like what you're saying, they can kill you. People normalize violence to achieve ideological and political objectives. That is all the Democratic Party has done for years. It is sick. It's sick. And these people that have been presidents, Obama, Clinton, these guys are ridiculous. They validate this perspective. They even funded the Iranian government who killed people all over the world and sponsored terrorism. They actually gave them money and allowed them to nearly have a nuclear bomb. And you wonder why we're where we are today? You know, September 10th, 2025, a sniper fired a single shot at Charlie Kirk during a Turning Point USA event in Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. Around noon, during the daytime, the bullet struck him in the neck as he was speaking with a spectator on campus in front of thousands of people. This kid was arrested 33 hours later. Just before that, 44 days before Charlie Kirk was assassinated, a gunman from Nevada stormed the Blackstone building in Park Avenue in Manhattan, outraged at the NFL, and killed four people. They were off-duty officer and whose pregnant wife was expecting their third child, an executive at Blackstone, a mother of two, a security guard, and a father of two. A fifth victim was also injured. It's sick. Do they think about these consequences? Do these idiots that want people dead ever think about the consequences? Hell no. They don't think about what the lives of these kids that have to be raised by single parents with very little income or very little resources have to go through. They don't care. All they care is that, well, that was eliminated. Brian Thompson, CEO, United Healthcare, shot in the back by a masked gunman outside a New York City hotel where his company was supposed to hold an investor conference later that morning. And Luigi Mangione was arrested 5 days later, allegedly in possession of a murder weapon and writings critical of the health insurance industry. Butler, Pennsylvania, a sniper fired a whole lot of shots at a rally for candidate Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. Corey Compatore was a father of two girls. Two other spectators survived gunshot wounds. Trump was narrowly escaped. Counter snipers shot and killed the guy, thank God, some 20-year-old Thomas Crooks. And then Trump was separately targeted in a second failed attempt by Ryan Ruth, who's in prison at his Mar-a-Lago house in Palm Beach on the golf course. This is all in a year, guys. This is crazy stuff. It's crazy stuff. And guess what? The Democrats love it. They love it. They want all this to happen. They're going to influence us to think that all this is correct. It's sad. When we think about assassination culture, we have to come to grips with what our moral values really are. The U.S. stands out among high-income nations as its high levels of gun violence. Over 70% of mass shootings in developed countries happen in the United States. There's been an astronomical increase in the number of active shooter incidents over the first quarter of the 21st century. 329 such incidents in 2015 to 689 up to 2021. It's in 150 years, in the last 150 years, there have been at least 15 attempts on the lives of presidents alone, and presidents-elect, and presidential candidates. Most cases of intentional shootings are motivated by the quest for significance, desire to demonstrate to their audience of dominance and power. And political assassinations add to these psychological benefits with an ideological commitment presumably intended to effect a political change for the common good. Wow. So what's going to happen to all these Democrats when the Republicans turn into them and decide we don't care anymore? We're going to kill all these bastards. What's going to happen when that happens? Not good. We don't need to go that direction, folks. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. But it could happen, and a lot of those people own guns. And it could happen if they just keep pushing and pushing our culture in this direction. That's going to be a war. And if it's a war, it's going to be an assassination war. And it's going to be ugly. And we don't need that, guys. We really need to back off on all this language. We need to back off on all this ideology that it's okay to kill people. We need to get back to what it is and what we're teaching our kids about morals. We need to understand the value of life. We need to understand the value of relationships. We need to understand what it is to care about other people. We need to get back to learning about empathy. What can be done to turn back this violence in America? Two things: reducing the feelings of hurt, inequality, insignificance in large segments of society, but that means they're not victims. That means they start saying I statements. I could get out of the basement and get a job. I could stop playing video games 24 hours a day and actually get a life and actually take some responsibility and take the pressure off my parents. That would be a great thing. Also, this means implementing policies and procedures affecting societal systems and institutions across the board by taking into account the psychological impacts on all of the stakeholders. What's happened in this country is after COVID and in this world, these people sat in their apartments and their houses all by themselves in their little brains thinking all kinds of things about the world, and they began to validate how correct they were because they had no one to have relationships with. COVID has torn apart the fabric of what it is to be a human being. And the Democrats ate that up. They love it. They love what it did to our society. Plus, political, ethnic, religious divides, nudging people away from simplistic black and white extremism will get us away from aggression. However, as long as we want to black and white each other to the point that you are this or you are that, or you are a label, we are instigating hatred over hatred. And I see, and it just amazes me, people that are old people standing on the streets with signs of hatred. And you see that, and you go, what the hell? I thought these people were supposed to be wise. They're not wise. They're idiots. They're influenced. They've been in their head way too long. Way too long. We also have to challenge our culture by deglorifying the gun and other firearms and gradually erasing the image of symbols of empowerment and significance. But as long as we have a crazy culture like the one we have, people need to have guns. But, people knew how to use guns, and they knew when you needed to shoot and when you don't. But nowadays, you don't know what the hell's walking down the street. You don't know what's going to try to break into your house. You don't know what's going to try to break into your car. You don't know what's going to try to mug you in the middle of the park. These people are crazy. We've let so many immigrants into our country, illegal immigrants. We have no idea what we're up against in this world. We all have to have guns now. We got to be our own police because the Democrats don't want us to have police. They don't want us to have army. They don't want us to have any protection whatsoever. They want us to walk around like free range chickens and just do whatever we do to each other. And it's all okay. It is crazy. The other thing is deglorifying the gun would be a great thing, but understanding what guns are for would be even better. But that would be in a society where things are much more calmed down. The assassination of conservative Charlie Kirk has shoved uncomfortable truths into light. Among them is the fact that the fringe left views aggressively promoted on college campuses have morphed into active embrace of assassination culture. And we've got politicians. I live in Washington. Believe me, these congressional people, the Senate people, the people that are in our state government, they are batshit crazy. Yesterday, they just decided to tax the millionaire tax. So if you make more than $1 million, we're going to get 10% of what you make. Just out of nowhere. Boy, that's going to incent you to want to start a business. That's going to want to incent you to be successful. It's amazing. They punish you for being successful. Anecdotal evidence abounds as many students and faculty have publicly cheered. Charlie Kirk believed in God, actually challenged people's thinking, and he was killed for that. He was killed for that. What in the world? What in the world? We got to get out of this, guys. We got to get out of this worldview of black and white thinking. Thanks for listening. I love hearing from you. You can do that on our webpage at voiceamericamedia.com or libsyn, libsyn.com, Dr. Gary Bell's Absurd Psychology. Now remember, assassination is extreme censorship. Also, assassination is also about who paid for the bullet. And war is a hired assassin's trade. Also, assassinations do not take account for what dies inside.